All right, most of you have finished up the starting point and in the process of getting feedback to you. Please look at the feedback and make adjustments, as I've noted in some of that feedback. Some of you didn't receive a grade. It doesn't mean you did a horrible job. It just means I'm kind of leaving that open until I get some get some corrections made on the starting point that you had sent in. Now on to the payroll. And again, remember, it's not absolute, but for the most part, we're going to have just the orange ones here that we would fill in, and the yellow ones would fill in themselves. There are some exceptions, and that may be one here. It may be particularly true if you have a seasonal business. Let's say you were running a lawn mowing business. Well, your big months would probably be, May, June, July, August. You probably have a little bit of work in April and a little in September, maybe even a little on into October. But otherwise you wouldn't have payroll, perhaps. Okay, so keep those things in mind as you're setting up this payroll, that there may be some of these in the yellow that you're going to change. Now, if your business is truly a simple business and you're it, okay, or even if you will have employees, the thing to note is this, okay, unless you are a C corporation, and none of you will probably be a C corporation, you will not pay the owners on this payroll sheet, okay? So please, everybody, let's say it this way. Leave this blank where it says owners. Just leave that blank. If you think your business is an exception, you can get a hold of me. Send me an email or something, okay? But owners are going to show up here on the cash flow, and we'll get to that later where it says owner's distribution. Okay, the reason for that, and this is just a bit of a lesson, doesn't really have to do with our template here, but the reason for that is that all of the entities, whether it's sole proprietorship, partnership, S corporation, LLC, LP, LLP, any of those are called pass-through organizations, meaning that the full profit or loss of the business flows through or passes through to the owners. Okay, and so they're going to pay taxes on this business, whatever the profit is. It doesn't matter how much money they take out of the business. Okay, they're going to pay taxes on whatever the profit is, or get a tax deduction if there happens to be a loss. Okay, only a C corporation pays taxes separately. We often hear that C corporations are double taxed because they pay taxes, and then when they pay dividends, their owners, or the people that own shares, also pay taxes on those dividends. Okay, so again, please, for all of you, because I don't think there's anybody in here that would be a C corporation, just leave that blank. For the rest of you, okay, if you have, or if you're contemplating that you would have an employee, this is just a simple matter of, well, I might have one full-time employee. I might pay them $10 an hour. I think in Montana, minimum wage is $8.15, so you have to pay that. Maybe they're going to work 35. That would be considered. You can see everything fills in, right? I might have 2 part-time employees that I'm going to pay $9 an hour, and they're going to each work 20 hours a week. Okay, so it all fills in good, except for the only other thing that we kind of need to add is going to be down here. Okay, you could add a pension program if you wanted to. Some employers would match a certain percent for a 401k or something like that. You could certainly add that, but you would all add some workers' compensation. Okay, so I expect everybody that has an employee. If you don't have any employees, if it's just you, this would all be blank. This whole sheet and the next one would be blank, and that's fine. Okay, but if you have an employee, there's going to be some workers' comp, and workers' comp depends on the type of business. Okay, if you're going to have an insurance agency, there's not a lot of risk to that. Not a lot of, you might stub your toe, walking over the threshold of the door, or you might slip and fall on the sidewalk and whatnot. But for the most part, the risks are pretty small, and so the rate's pretty low, maybe 1 or 2%. If, on the other hand, you're in logging and you got employees, nobody chose logging for this project, but if you were, your workers' comp would be very high, maybe upwards of 100%, okay, because it's a very risky occupation. So kind of go through. I'm not going to make you look that up. If you want to, you could kind of maybe search for it and see what you could find, but plug in a percentage there, okay, kind of based on the what you think your business is in terms of risk for the employees. Then we go to payroll, the next one, and everything's yellow there, which means that we don't necessarily have to change anything, but we could. Okay, here I think a 20% increase and then a 30% increase is too high. There's no way I'm going to pay my workers that much, so I'm going to put in a 5% increase, which I have to enter as 0.05 for both of them. Okay, you have to note then down here I need to do the same thing for all 4 of these, and it would be for my workers' comp then as well. Okay, so I'd have to change this to 0.05. Oops, wrong spot, sorry. I have to change this to 0.05. Then if I want, I can just drag that down. I could drag it all the way down. Okay, and maybe in the next year I'd go 7%, so 0.07. Okay, I think 20% and 30% is a little bit high, but I got to make sure that all these. Remember, this is the increase, that they're anticipating for that, and so that your Social Security is the rate that they pull out is going to stay the same, and so the increase is going to be the same as whatever you're predicting up there. There we have it. We're done with the payroll. Okay, should be that simple. Again, if you don't have any employees, you can leave both of these blank, absolutely blank. Okay. Then we go on to operating expenses. A key thing here, or a key warning at this point in time, is to say do not include amounts. You've got a lot of things here, supplies, rent deposits, those inventory, those types of things. Okay. Do not include those same amounts here. Okay, and this gets to be a little bit confusing. I'll try to make it. Let's go to prepaid insurance. Let's say you put $1,200 in there. Okay, and you think that's going to be for the full year, right? Okay, you're going to have a $1,200 premium. You got to pay it up front. It's going to last for the full year. In that case, you would have nothing here. Okay, nothing all along. Okay, maybe in month 12 you could put it down again, another $1,200. That would be okay, but you for sure wouldn't have anything here in the first month, right? Otherwise, you're going to be doubling up. It'll show up both as a startup expense and an expense in the first month, and it'll double up. Okay. On the other hand, let's take one like supplies. Well, you may have some pre-opening supplies. Maybe you're laying in $100 worth of supplies, but you think you're going to use $100 of supplies every month. Yeah, well then you'd refresh that or buy another $100 worth in month 1, and you'd buy $100 worth, for the rest of the year. Okay, so that's fine. So some of those, they're going to recur in that first month. But if it's not an expense that would recur because you've paid a full year's ahead, then don't put it in the first month. Okay. I see what else might be in there. Advertising and promotions might be one. If you're purchasing signs and doing a lot of that, your advertising and promotions on the front end might be $5,000, but your monthly expense might only be a few $100s. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind as you're filling that out. And you only got the orange things up here. They do a pretty good job of laying out what these expenses are, so you can kind of go down, okay, and fill it in. If you got like I did here, I'll delete this and come back. if you think the expense is going to be pretty stable and pretty much recurring, you can put the 100 in there. You can hover over that until you get that black cross. You click and drag, and it'll just take that all the way across. Your rent, if you're renting, for $500 a month or whatever the case may be, is one of those expenses that would stay consistent. Okay. Some of you may have seasonal things too, and so you'll have to put those in for the various months where you expect to have seasonal ups and downs. I'm trying to think what are some other things. Car and truck expenses. Some of you showed that you're purchasing a vehicle, and that's one thing. That's one way to do it, and that's perfectly fine. If you've in fact purchased a vehicle, your car and truck expenses are going to be, the gas that you'd buy on a monthly basis, and maybe every 6 months you got to change the oil, so you might add an extra $50 for that. Those types of things. If you're not purchasing a vehicle but you're going to use one, kind of think of that as a mileage. And the government right now, it's around 50 cents. So if you thought you were going to put 200 miles per month on your personal vehicle, but the business needs to pay for that, then the business should reimburse you for $100 a month. Okay, 50 cents times the 200, so $100 a month was what it would be. Trying to think what other things that are on here. Licenses are one of those things that you probably paid for here. Okay, that then you wouldn't put in the operating expenses. Supplies, travel, those things. Okay, all this down here you don't have to worry about. Okay, it'll self-fill in. If there's any things, I don't have a lot. There's probably some stuff on here for yours, but I don't have any because I don't have anything. I left my starting point blank, so it doesn't have anything. So I'd say operating expenses for the first year, kind of make sure you fill it in across, if you have those that are kind of seasonal, or you might have expenses that aren't monthly that might, occur every 6 months or something like that, and that's fine. And there's a miscellaneous. I'd say don't change the white ones, but if you've got some unique expenses over here, you can sure change these descriptions. There wouldn't be anything wrong with changing those descriptions, so that'd be perfectly fine. Then you get to years 2 and 3, and they got growth rates in here of 3, 4, 5% kind of depending, and those might be okay. I don't know that you're going to want to mess around with those at all. You certainly could if you thought you were going to have some that were going to go way up or not go up at all. For example, you could argue that your lease is locked in for 3 years, and so this is maybe going to be 0. Okay, if your lease were locked in, it sure would be. Okay, so you can take a look at those. Odds are they'll not change much, if at all. But feel free to make some changes there if you want to. I just wouldn't get too carried away, or if you're going to get carried away, let me know ahead of time. That should be pretty much it then for the payroll and the operating expenses. Again, you'll start to see a lot more things fill in on yours. That aren't filling in on mine just because I don't have things in here in the starting point. But get those filled out. We should turn those in at the end of this week, and I'll get that set up in a Dropbox for you and send out a note about that along with the link for this particular video. Thanks, and have a good day.